episode 11 of Modular Podcast. We've got 3 highly esteemed guests, all slightly different backgrounds. The show's going to be on panel design, user interface, how that affects how we're using things, how we approach different gear differently. But first, we'll go around and introduce everyone. How are you, Matthew?
Yeah, fine, thanks. Good. Just admiring that multicoloured skiff in the background of yours. Seems all about aesthetics.
Yeah, well, I'll only charge you £50 for a copy of the image, and then you can print it out and make your own.
All right, that sounds reasonable.
What have you been up to? Specific modules or stuff you use?
Well, I've been very, very lucky to acquire a small bug brand system. It's got some incredibly rare modules in there, so I'm extremely pleased with that. And I've just been putting that through its paces. I haven't had a chance really to be ill with this dreaded cold, but I'm certainly just getting knee deep into that now.
So when you're getting rid of Euro and going all surgeon bug brand?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. Yeah,
we're all going to go that way. When Roland and Korg take over, we're all going to look for other things.
Yeah, exactly.
Greg, how are you?
Not too bad, Ben.
I see Pac-Man's joining Mr. Wazo.
It's joined as well. Since the last podcast, I picked up a Expert Sleepers ES8.
All right.
Been using it with Spectro Audio CV tools, which is quite deep. Still finding my way with it, but what's possible with that thing is quite deep.
So do you feel that's the way forward for loads of modulation and control rather than more modules?
Well, it depends. I was talking to somebody recently about this, and they were saying, well, it gets you back into the laptop, doesn't it? It depends on what way you look at it. It depends on if you want to go completely kind of balls deep with it, or if you want to just use little bits of it. If you want to just throw an extra envelope that's synced to Ableton, or an LFO or whatever you need, just sync to your DAW. There's a recent update for it that works better with clocks. So with Ableton clock, it's synced much tighter. It even works with Ableton Link straight out of CV tools now.
Yeah, I saw that. I mean, it depends. If you've got a system there where the laptop's next to it and you're going to record the audio into the laptop anyway, why not get a load of extra modulation?
Plus, it's all expandable with the other Expert Sleepers modules.
Would you take that out live, do you think?
That's the plan for it. That's the reason why I got it.
A smaller case and a laptop.
Smaller case, because I would want to record my live setup as well. So the S8 will do it all. I'll be able to get a clock from my computer and record it all from the ES8.
Cool. We'll move on to Felix, Tuesday Night Machines. How's it going?
Hey, good. Yeah, thanks for having me. Cool.
So what have you been up to modular-wise? Have you had much chance lately, or?
Oh, well, this year, I haven't really had that much chance to spend with the modulars, or like with the Eurorack modulars at least. I did spend some time with the tiny sizer and the mini sizer again, which are those super tiny patch bay synthesizers from Germany. And I've kind of rediscovered those, or at least the tiny sizer, and the mini sizer is pretty new. So I've been playing with that for a bit. And they also have quite a good MIDI implementation. So there's even stuff like you can kind of get aftertouch in there and stuff like that. So that's all. And then I've been playing around with this Axolotl DIY stuff recently, just building basically my own instruments. Not really modular yet, but they do take analog clock, so I can at least sync them to the modular. So I'm looking forward to do some of that stuff some more.
Yeah, we'll come into that. Moving down the line, we've got Hannes, Paper Noise. How are you?
Hi, yeah, thanks. Doing great. Great to be here.
What have you been up to lately? Either design stuff you I imagine can't talk about it probably, but what have you been up to?
Yeah, mostly designing stuff I can't say much about, but yeah, very busy at the moment. And There's certainly a couple of new things coming up in the future. Probably our booth will unveil something.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. Each time a show comes around, and we'll get to the rack you've sent us with all this stuff, and there's going to be something you've worked on of new Eurorack releases. There's got to be. Yeah, cool. We'll keep moving down, and we've got Charlie, loudest warning. How's it going?
Very well, yeah, thank you.
What have you been up to?
I've been actually mainly rearranging the workshop. It's kind of boring, but it's just got too full of junk. So I've been thinning that out and trying to finish off some projects. Mainly making paper face now at the moment. I've got an order in for some more aluminium panels, and that just takes time.
Yeah,
sourcing all this stuff, just you sit on waiting for bits to come in, and the machines go wrong. But I've just been making some things like Ian Fritz stuff in Paperface, just doing stuff like that, really. Just getting on. Because our Christmas comes along, and I don't know about you lot, but I just don't do anything, and I can't do anything.
Yeah.
Because all the other people that you're buying stuff off, they go on holiday. And I went away. My day job took me away, so I've been traveling around a bit, and I've just got back, and it's like, oh, it's horrible. So just a big tidy up, really. Yeah, it's going well. It's good.
Yeah, good. I spent more than a week redoing this room over Christmas.
Yeah.
I think it was an old Sound on Sound magazine, actually. Paul White or someone said that every Christmas, when everyone's doing nothing, he just locks himself away when the rest of the family are back at work and just spends a week redoing it. And I've nearly ended up doing the same thing.
Well, I did it about 6 months ago. I moved everything in the studio about 1 foot to the right. It took me a week just because I had to unplug everything and make sure that some cables were at the right length. And it was crazy. It was like, what, this is taking you a week just to go like that?
Well, it's not so simple, is it, with the shelving behind you?
But yeah, it was. So I know what you mean. It just takes much longer than what you think.
Yeah. My girlfriend had this amazing idea that I should make the wall out of pegboard, and everything then is modular and can hang. You can hang everything and move it all around, and you can put shelves on it. And yeah, it's a pretty good idea, I think.
Good idea. That I mean, that's well, not similar, but it kind of in the same vein. I thought, well, I've kind of got this modular equipment. Why don't I make the shelving modular? So mine, I can move the heights really quickly. You can get cables around the back of it, and I tried to kind of keep that almost like that idea of just keep everything modular,
Yeah, yeah.
It's great.
Is there a weight limit? Do you feel like you can't hang much more, or I guess it depends on the wall, doesn't it?
Well, you can get like the 3mm MDF. It's pretty rubbish, but this is, I think, 8mm.
All right.
And you can get metal ones as well. There was a chap who made a metal pegboard synth, big orange tangerine thing. It was on a Muff Wiggler.
Oh wow!
It was like 30 inches wide, and it just because it's on like the Surge grid, but it's an inch grid, I think. And this is quite incredible. Just the metal, but this is quite thick. I think you could hang quite a lot off there.
Yeah. I mean, obviously you'll know, Charlie, but like, didn't the original Surge panels, when they were, you went to the DIY to make them, weren't they all pre-drilled? And it was the other way around. You covered up what you didn't need.
Yeah.
Really what you needed.
I've even got an old. If I can go and get it.
I like that look on pegboard.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, it's good.
I like that there's paintbrushes between the systems as well.
That's it.
It's quite cool. Like
it's quite dusty in here, but that's a panel I got from someone. So right. You can see that, but you can see on the back all the.
Yeah. All right. Yeah.
But this is I think mid 70s or late 70s, maybe early 80s. So it's actually a very thin. Like I think it's aluminium.
Right.
Looks like that metal photo process. That's just stuck on and folded over. So you've got the.
But yeah, with the paper face ones and things I've seen, I just thought it was a really interesting idea that of kind of have everything pre-drilled.
Yeah.
And with your kind of paper face panel, you basically obscure the pieces that you don't need. And I thought, what a great idea. You know, that you kind of like the pegboard in the back, you know, you've got distance.
I mean, that Surge, the whole Surge system in the 70s, they sort of, it's like almost like Corbusier, like came up with a whole system. And it's kind of amazing, actually, even the graphics. And the later ones are still pretty cool, but I think there's a chap called Rich Gold who designed all the triangles and
All right.
the Gold book, and he came up with the GUI. And it's kind of, you don't need really much writing on the panel, which I quite like.
Yeah, it's almost like hieroglyphic sort of, it's just sort of symbols, isn't it, that you're looking at, you know?
Yeah. I've got really quite into it at the moment because you can just really minimalize everything. It's just like this Egyptian or like hieroglyphic. It's pretty good. But I don't do the multiple holes. I actually drill them to fit. Because I mean, I suppose I could get them CNC'd, but I've got a big drill and I just drill what I mean. Yeah.
But I guess if you know, like back in the day, if you just had, I don't know, 10 people as students to make them, it's just you can go right there. You go. You don't have to, you know, drill. You can just you know, get on soldering.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, the early kits, I think you got the circuit board and you just wired it up, so it was all super simple. You stuck your paper on. You could varnish it if you wanted it. I mean, there's some people who did collages. There's some crazy looking ones out there.
Oh yeah.
I haven't done that myself. I'm trying to. If I start collaging, I don't know where I'll end up. Some weird stuff. But,
onto the hard stuff. Collaging. So we've already started, really, but I'd like to kick off with Felix. This show came about from you mentioning that the Bastel modules, the wooden panelled Bastel modules that you've got, get talked about and asked about a lot. What are people saying? I mean, we can kind of guess that it's a different material, but what's the sort of feedback you get on the system?
Well, I mean, first, of course, you can see that it's panels, and I think many people weren't used to that when they came out, because sure, we're just used to metal, aluminum, stuff like that, maybe acrylic glass sometimes. But yeah, with wood, it's always a little weird, I guess, because you might think that it could warp, or if it's too humid, it might do something, or it might split easily. And then, of course, is the print attached there well enough, or will it rub off? So that's usually the kind of questions I get under my demos for the Bastel stuff. And I think that's what they also get as questions, at least. And then, of course, there's the whole aspect of design, like, is it good readable, or is it, does it just look good together with other modules, which we, I guess, can discuss as well, everybody of us. But just like from a sturdiness, basically, point of view, I think they're really great. I mean, they're 3 millimeters thick, so it's a millimeter more than your standard metal front plates, but it's the same as the acrylic ones you get, like from EOWave or from other manufacturers. So I think that's fine. Right, yeah, that's the current system I have. That's mostly Bastel Instruments modules and some Aero Instruments modules, which are also wood, but they're actually 2 millimeters thick. So just like a Döpfer panel or something like that. And even those are sturdy enough, I think. I mean, I guess if you would tighten the screws like with an electric drill, you could just split them. But if you just, I don't know, use a hand drill normally, then that's totally fine.
Right.
Well, we've had the conversation. I guess it diverts into rack crash as a conversation topic, but me and Matthew said this to each other before, when people are so concerned about rack crash, and it's never that bad, but you think, who's screwing this stuff in so hard that it's like they've had a knife to the mounting hole, and just it's nuts. I don't get why people do it. So you say that the 2 mil wood panels are sturdy enough?
Yeah, I think so. I haven't had any problems with them. And if you see, like on the bottom left, the one with the big LED bulbs there, that's just 2 millimeters, and got a lot of patch points in the middle where they're not attached to the rails, of course. So even there in the middle of the module, I don't really have any problems with them like warping or worrying about splitting it. So yeah, I think that's totally fine. The thing with the 3 millimeter panels is just that you of course need slightly longer screws. So the regular screws that come with the DivKid module won't fit. You need a millimeter longer. The Bastler modules come with those screws, and I guess like everybody who has got a modular has like a, I don't know, bag full of screws anyway, and yeah, you can just get like 100 of the longer ones too, and yeah, that's just going to be like €1 or $1. So that's really no problem. But regarding rack rash, it's true that of course because it's wood, and even though it's hard and 3 millimeters, you get rack rash more easily, even with washers. But again, you don't really tighten them so much that it would really hurt the module in any way.
I think it looks great as a full system. Do you find, and I guess this is for Greg as well, because I know Greg's got some of the modules, I have as well, but just to put the question to everyone that has got them, do you find they stick out a bit, being a mil thicker?
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
So other than being noticeable, does it stick out in terms of it's any issue? Do you find it's in the way?
Well, no. It's definitely not in the way. It's 1 millimeter. So, I mean, 1 mil. It's sticks out, and it noticeably sticks out, but I don't see why it would be an issue.
Yeah, I think it's fine too. I even have like those Klangbau modules who use steel panels, which are just 1 millimeter thick. Wow. So you have like 2 millimeter difference, and I think it's fine. Sure, I mean, they stick out, but I think even, or like especially also with their design, they of course stick out. But then again, pretty much all the modules do if you mix manufacturers. So that 1 or 2 millimeter difference in depth, I don't think that.
Not as if you're playing a keyboard or anything, or running your hands up and down something.
Yeah.
Because as well, you've got different knob heights, switch heights, all those kind of things. It's not everything has to exist within the same kind of playing.
I know, exactly.
So just as a sort of side point, I'll pull the image back up. Is that altogether because you like working with an idea of a system? You know, this is the sort of Bastel voice with some extra error instruments, or is it just sort of coincidence that they're together? Do you mix and match?
Well, actually, a while ago, I really liked just creating my own individual instruments, like just mixing all kinds of manufacturers, and that was fine. But then Bastel came out with this big run of new modules, and since I do demo videos for them, I thought, hey, I'll just buy one of their cases, then I'll get some more modules, and then I basically ended up with 3 cases at that point. And I just said, okay, this wooden one will be just for wooden modules then, before I mix them. But yeah, now I filled it with wooden modules only. And I must say that in comparison to like a mixed manufacturer system, I found it really interesting that I kind of get the philosophy or the idea of Bastel instruments now a little bit better than I did before, when I just had 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 modules and then just tons of other manufacturers as well. So I thought this was pretty interesting, because before I thought, no, not just, you know, one manufacturer. But experiencing this was really interesting. And then, as I said, I also have this other system now, which is just Klangbau, the steel modules. And there it was the same. I immediately just got a different philosophy in their, like what they like for sound creation. Like Bastel instruments, they use samples. They don't have an oscillator or like a traditional VCO at the moment. And Klangbau, which you see here, he has like Benjamin and Twin Peak filter and some weird algorithmic pattern generators. And yeah, really no traditional sequencers or something like that. So Bastel is more like drum sequencing, MIDI, CV sequencing, samples, short sounds. And yeah, Klangbau is more experimental in that way, I would say. And yeah, it looks completely different. And this is my steel rack, and the other one's my wooden rack, and my third rack I've sold since then. And you know, I just have a drawer full of unused modules, which I just swap out every now and then, or when I have a show, something like that.
I think what we need a company out there to start making ones out of stone. We've kind of got all the materials. That'd be great. Yeah, like a caveman one would be great.
I love that. I think there's a lot to be said for not just the looks and aesthetics of something which is obviously what we're talking about in this show, but you do really get an idea of what someone wanted and their idea, just in terms of where attenuation is. You know, is it on the panel like the dope for stuff? Do the jacks go up the sides? Are they all at the bottom? I think you definitely do patch differently. You get into a certain way of patching when they're all together. Did anyone else see, can you remember, Matthew, I'll try and pull it up, the Owl project? They had a wooden modular system.
Yeah, we were.
But that was, it's funny you mentioned Caveman, that was like super Caveman setup in terms of big, like, it was just a bit.
The knobs on those were like sawn branches. So they made, you still had like the bark on the knobs. It was still,
yeah.
You know, it was like you just plugged a tree in and you were kind of making sounds from that. But
yeah. So that's presuming this loads up. Yeah, there we go, look. So it was literally like bits of chopped up twig.
And that's real?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Session with them, didn't we, Ben? We went and met these guys, and we had this jam where they had a girl that had a spinning wheel, and she was making wool from this.
I think I saw some pictures. Yeah,
and then we were taking a clock signal from her spinning wheel, and then we sent that to all our modules. So as she was increasing time or slowing down, she was controlling all of the modules just from all device. It was a jam.
Yeah, it was great. I met them. They're in Manchester for a project called Rock Music. Again, I've got a picture I'll pull up from that as well, which was, I think, making bits of flint and stone-based tools, really ancient methods, but then miking that up and creating sort of soundscapes and sonic art from that. And I went over just as a sort of, I guess, informative process, casual, sort of jamming around. But then, yeah, the last one was the spinning wheel that had, I think it had a sensor that gave us all 12 spokes. So it sort of felt like we were in 12/8. And then there was another sensor that came around every 12 times, like the start of the bar. We got a fluctuating CV out of the sort of pedal that she was using. And she was spinning wool while we just made chaotic noise.
Yeah, it was great. And it was in this old boathouse on the edge of this lake, and it was such a strange evening. You know?
Yeah, I've seen those pictures. That place looks really cool.
Mm.
It was a good place to do it. It was really funny. She got going, and obviously we started patching and sort of spreading signals around the few of us that were there. And then as she sort of stood up and stopped, she went, "Oh, was I doing that?" And it's like that sort of realization that this weird landscape of 6 modular systems or whatever.
Yeah, it was just this amalgamation of a really, really ancient piece of technology, you know, that's been around for hundreds of years, but using that as a timing value for, you know, modern gear. It was, it was an interesting experience.
But I think this is kind of getting more modern again, or like a more sought after way of making music. Like we've seen that with this Coma Instruments Kickstarter for this little box that
Real kit.
has those sensors.
Yeah, we've all pre-ordered.
And that's how Bassel Instruments started their modulars as well, or teasing their modulars with those motors and sensors.
Yeah,
and it's pretty interesting. Also, like Contact Mic is, of course, like everybody right now, I guess, really cool again to make music with that.
Yeah. Anyone that's, I mean, you must have sort of been hiding under a rock a bit if you've missed it. 'Cause it's been all over, hasn't it? With how well did it do? It doesn't tell you now it's finished, but I think they sort of smashed their funding goal in about a day.
Yeah, I think they had like over 1,000 pre-orders.
Yeah.
I saw it. I think yesterday I had 250,000.
Yeah,
in funds. I don't know how.
I think it was closer to 300k by the end.
Oh, it says there, look, nearly 300,000 euros, but the original goal was only 20,000 euros.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I mean, that's great. That's so good.
It reminded me of Bastel a lot actually, and their booth at Super Booth where they'd made, I think it's the Hendrickson module that will take a guitar input,
It was amazing.
impedance input, and they said we didn't want someone to stand and play guitar, so we made the Modular do it, and they had all the fretting on little motors, and it was really, really cool booth. They had a glass bottle swinging that was being hit by a motor as like a cowbell.
I can't believe the attention to detail with that, and how long that must have taken to set up, you know, to actually bring to the venue and then set that thing up. It's not like you can go to a shop if you forgot a piece for it. It's like it was completely bespoke, and it was incredible, wasn't it? It was kind of
planning and logistics that must have gone into that.
Yeah,
crazy.
They also have like modular furniture, like a modular booth setup. That was really cool as well, with those cross-shaped holes everywhere where you can just stick stuff in and then attach everything. But yeah, they always say that if you use those solenoids or those motors and sensors, attaching them is actually the hardest part. You can buy everything, you can think of cool stuff, but yeah, that motor, that just creates so much force. Yeah,
without
you really need to attach it well.
Without finding video, that's the only thing that's just come up. But yeah, so the guitar had a motor plucking the strings, something changing the fretting. It wasn't just static; it was an actual musical line.
Yeah, it moved around the fretboard, didn't it?
I remember probably saying his name wrong, but Vaclav, just after I think we filmed our video, he sort of turned and told the machine off because it broke a string. And they obviously weren't expecting that, so they were a string down. But yeah, it's great. There's definitely a lot of just sort of quite raw DIY things going on. Certainly in the UK, there's more happening. In terms of the other sort of systems and things, Felix, you've pulled up. You've got the sort of, I'm just going to pull this image up of the wood and metal Frankensynth. I know it sounds really petty, but straight away I'm just not drawn to it. I look at the other two and I think, I want to play on that. But then this, I look at it and not so much.
I don't know. For me, it's fine. I mean, any other, I think probably it's too many wooden modules because they, I don't know, overshadow everything in the top row. But I don't know. For me, as I said, like before I start with this one manufacturer per case thing, I really just like my modular as mixed as possible, basically. Just picking out the best things in air quotes from each manufacturer and then putting them together. And I really never really cared about the looks. I mean, now having just like a wooden modular, I sure see that it looks pretty cool, but I really don't mind. I really don't care. I think as soon as there are cables in there, it looks so messy anyway that it doesn't really matter anymore.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I'm being slightly silly. My few Bastel modules are dotted around. They're not all together, and I really don't care. But the immediate, or like if a family member walked in or something, they'd be drawn to the one thing. I'm sure they'd just gravitate to what looks like an instrument as a whole, if you like.
I suppose in a way as well, it's almost like it's almost like asking a bigger question of like, is aesthetics important to you as a user of module or not? Is it more about choosing the right modules for, say, like a small live case, for instance? Or do you really need things to be either all the same or from the same manufacturer? I mean, I'm not kind of casting a vote anywhere. I'm just sort of saying how important is aesthetics to some people,
Well, even a sort of Frankenstein system, I think that you still patch it in a certain way that may, I don't know, tick a certain box in someone's subconscious and get them to patch a certain way. I think presented with the same functioning sort of two-roll system in any format that looks differently, I'm sure I would patch each one differently.
Yeah.
You're given 20 cables, go play on that. I think each one would definitely be different.
Oh, yeah.
One's better than the other in terms of each different style or a Frankenstein system or a certain format, but I definitely patch them differently.
Well, I mean, they're all saying, like the first bite is with the eye. It really is.
Yeah.
like when you approach a system, it's like, you know, before you even plugged it in, you're either going to go, wow, or you're going to go, what the hell is that? You know, so there's, you know, there is that thing before you've even turned it on. It's kind of, you know, I think it is important.
But I think if you look at it from the perspective of somebody buying a modular, like usually piece by piece, and probably not just a whole system together, then I think it's more about functionality, or at least I felt that for myself, especially. Like, modules are still kind of expensive, I think, and so you choose really what you want to get, and I think functionality is way more important, or sound, than aesthetics, especially if you mix manufacturers anyway. So I don't really get why people say I won't buy this because it is made of wood, or I won't buy this because it has some weird graphics on it. Because I really just want the functionality of the module, and sure, it should be designed in an intuitive way to patch it easily and stuff like that. But if it's red or blue or whatever, I don't really care. But sure, if you have like a whole system that you buy, like, or that you approach at somebody else's place, where everything looks nice, sure, you're drawn to that. But if you build your own, I think it's not that important, or I don't see why it would be so important to some people.
I suppose we saw the first kind of tide of it when we got, you know, the grayscale alternative panels, you know, for which you kind of, that's when I think I first saw that, oh, right, well, a certain kind of aesthetic is important to some people. Obviously, some people absolutely love the make noise aesthetic, and almost like they come from that kind of guitar pedal aesthetic, you know, kind of DIY look. Then obviously the grayscale ones, you've got the kind of completely, you know, stripped down, very sort of legible type, etc. So yeah, obviously it was kind of appealing to some people to kind of break out from maybe what the designer thought the module should look like. People wanted to go in a different way, you know.
Just sticking with Bastel, another thing Felix sent was these Magpie modular panels. Which you do see with Bastel a lot. People asking for non-wood panels for whatever reason they have issue with them, because they're as sturdy and good as anything else I've used. But they've stuck with the original design. You'd think the alternate panels for Bastel would be more grayscale, or certainly that's what I thought the first lot we'd see would be.
I've got one of those for skis, and it's the same thickness as all my other panels, so you lose that 1 mil overhang.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose their argument was probably, oh, it's just for the people who don't like wood. You know, they just don't like the wood look or whatever, but, you know.
Yeah, it's interesting, because usually the alternate panel is a different style. Not material, because the majority are aluminium anyway, but I think it's interesting that they've stuck that way. Bastel are making aluminium panels as well, or in the process of. Any out yet?
What I like about the Magpie panels is that they don't have those round mounting holes, but the wide ones.
Oh, the oval-shaped holes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's pretty cool. I don't know if it's possible. I mean, yeah, no, it is definitely possible in wood as well. At least Aero Instruments does it on their modules. With Bastel, they still just have the ones that have to be perfectly on the holes there on the screw.
Yeah, that can be a little awkward. I have a few modules that definitely aren't cut right, and I know that whatever I put to the left or right of it is going to have to nudge.
Those, yeah.
Which is an argument for sliding nuts, isn't it? But I absolutely hate sliding nuts.
Oh yeah, me too. Well, this is important. Again, I know it's aesthetic. You're not really seeing them because they're behind the panel, but just from having to take things out when I've got like my live case and things and choose modules, it's like, oh god, and it falls through, and trying to line it up and getting a pencil to move it along, it's like, forget it.
Well, another way to do it is to, in between the two mounting holes, is to always leave a spare sliding nut, isn't it? So if you take it out,
I've got about 5
nuts. It's easier to move around, but every time I've done it, however careful I am, I end up just pulling a whole row out in a bad mood, and then just starting again completely. It's definitely
a good idea. Like, oh yeah, I can move them around, but it's just, you know, tell you, kids, don't do sliding nuts. Don't do it.
I must say I really prefer them. Like sliding nuts, like the square nuts, not the hex nuts, of course, but the square sliding nuts are really cool because.
Oh, you like them? Oh wow!
I do. I really prefer them because I've had those threaded strips in cases, and there would always be like, yeah, as Ben said, this one module which just takes an extra, I don't know, just an extra millimeter because it's not cut right, and then moving things around, it's not as easy because, or if you just want to exchange one module and it's just a little wider or thinner, you can just, you know, loosen the modules around with sliding nuts and then just, I don't know, pull them all together or slide them around. And with threaded strips, you always have to, yeah, pull everything out of the case and then rearrange it just 1 millimeter to the right or left. And I think that's more work than with a, with the case with enough sliding nuts. As Ben said, also you need enough of those nuts, obviously.
I think if you had, I don't know, an 84 HP system and you had 83 sliding nuts, you'd probably be. But for me, I don't know, even when people say, you see it a lot now, I think, on cases that come with sliding nuts, we send extra sliding nuts as if to say, don't worry, you'll be fine. But then I still don't find that's the case. For me, I don't like it personally.
Yeah,
we touched on this idea of certain patching and approaches to systems. I put it to you, Hannes, working with such a large amount of Eurorack manufacturers. Is that when you start working with someone, is their own identity the first thing that comes up, or is it more about specific modules to get going, or how does it tend to work?
Yeah, well, I get both, though probably the first situation is more common. It's more common to make the groundwork before lay a foundation and then build up from there. Instead of doing the other thing, there also have been some in betweens. For example, with hex inverter, I basically just started with modules. I was like the VC noise and the MIDI 2CV module at the beginning, and some random ideas for the panels, and the whole thing really just grew, kind of mutating from those first ideas into the later modules.
I'll pull
one thing I see a lot with, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. That's part of what you've designed and companies you work with.
Yeah.
How different is it starting fresh with someone like Mutable Instruments over someone, say, Hex Inverter, that were already going before you were working together?
It's usually easier to start from scratch, I would say.
But Hannes, how much influence do you have on the knobs, I was thinking? Because those are like an important part also when it comes to price calculations, because they can be really expensive.
Yeah.
And do manufacturers come to you and say, no, that knob is way too expensive, or we cannot put that on there?
That's one of the usually the trickiest parts when working on whole design language for somebody. For example, there's this stage in the design development where you have to choose the knobs, and it's usually a mix between looking through hundreds of catalogs, finding which knobs are, well, affordable enough, which knobs are available in the combination of sizes, colors, optimals, and whatever you need for a specific module. Then finding out that most options you thought would be great don't work, and then you have to go and find fallback options which don't work either. And at one point, you just give up and say, okay, let's take what we can find, and then usually find something which is still great. But it's really we've been with a couple of people I work for, been very close to having our own knobs made. Also very, very expensive, so I can understand that it's a step that people are a bit reluctant to take because it's really an investment. But yeah, just to say how it can be.
Yeah,
and the whole thing is that it needs to match, and not just with the graphics. I mean, usually there's kind of a philosophy in you know the kind of spacing that you want, kind of size that you're aiming for the panels, and so the knobs really need to go well with that.
Yeah. I mean, I imagine having anything made, it made me think of these, sorry, pull the image up, the knurlies that Bafako have just had made, which is a screw that will take an Allen key, a crosshead screwdriver, a flathead screwdriver. It's also hand screws, it'll hand tighten, there's a built-in washer. And it's people moaning that they're not cheap. You know, a bag of basic M3 screws or whatever size is really cheap on eBay and things, but they've had to get those made, like custom design. It seems so insignificant, but getting an actual screw manufactured must be such an issue.
Oh yeah, but at least this isn't just like an M3 screw. It's bringing something completely different to the market, isn't it? The fact that you can hand tighten something. You know?
Is that something, do you think, that's new to the whole market of stuff in the world? Like, I mean, I've never seen anything like that on anything.
That's the impression I'm getting, that because thumb screws exist, but
yeah,
that is an M3 screw, 7mm long, can be thumb screws, hand tighten, Phillips slot or Allen key, you know, washer built in. I think that's a completely new product available to. Hopefully, they're going to be able to sell it out to other things.
Yeah,
modular, because I've never seen anything like that before.
And they're really well made, aren't they? They really feel good. You know, feel really nice and.
Oh yeah,
the patent on that. It seems a shame to keep it at M3.
Yeah. They could have. Well, there was. I won't go into too much detail. I don't want to sort of name and shame anyone where details aren't present, but a conversation came up recently about copyright in China, where obviously lots of manufacturing is done, and people outsourcing, and that if you propose to a factory in China to do a project and don't take with it straight away, they'll essentially just do it anyway. And that did happen recently, potentially with someone else. And when this came up, a lot of other people came in and just went, well, that's what manufacturing in China is. You know, you go with a project, you back and forth about price, adjusting prototypes. If you never see that through or take too long, they'll just sell the idea to someone else and just make it anyway. So I hope that this is sort of properly licensed and everything to Bafako, and they can take full advantage of it. They're great to use as well, moving all this around. It makes such a difference.
You ever seen magnetic jacks? Magnets instead of jacks?
Oh wow, no.
There was a guy years ago on Electromusic who was doing it with neodymium, whatever they're called, magnets on the panel, and then you'd have the patch cables had a magnet on each end, and he'd just, and instead of having jacks, they were just conducting magnets, the signals. Oh, that was quite cool.
Kind of like Korg little bits, the way they work, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true.
And Folktech, they also use those magnet cables for their boutique instruments.
Yeah.
We're starting to see it more on phone chargers, funnily enough. I've seen lots of phone chargers just with a snap-in charging socket. I'll try and find the Folktech. I've not seen that before on an instrument anyway.
I think it's like the Folktech Bug series or something like that. If you're looking that up. But I actually just saw in IKEA, they actually have like phone sleeves now with built-in induction charging pots, so you can even charge your iPhone by inductions. And then they have those desk lamps, and on the bottom stand, you can just put your phone and it automatically charge if you have the IKEA dock thing, which is really nice or interesting. I haven't tried it out, but yeah.
That was right. Ben showed me. Did you see there's actually a modular case in one of their IKEA catalogue brochure shots.
Yeah.
It's like someone's bedroom, you know, some sort of hipster bedroom, and they've got
That's I'll find that in a second. That's the Folktech.
All right.
Seeing that sort of yellow part, just they also look like buttons on the end of the wire.
Things on the end, right?
It doesn't look like there's much to grab. Like you'd actually have to pull the wire.
Yeah.
Rather than reaching for the socket, the end of the socket to pull cables.
Yeah.
But without trying it, it's hard to sort of comment. It's interesting though, different ways of working. Again, I think I'd definitely not just that fault tech, but I think I'd definitely patch differently.
Yeah.
For a start, I'd probably be throwing cables.
Yeah.
My patching would probably resort to one being plugged in and sort of going like this and seeing what sticks. See how that works out. We should mention different formats as well. I think, well, certainly in shop, Matthew, you have a few different formats.
Yeah, I mean, if we were going to talk about, I mean, just forget, let's draw a line under sound at the moment.
Yeah.
I've got quite a few different systems here. I've got a large Eurorack system, and sort of 8 months ago or whatever, I acquired a Surge panel, and then I got a couple more. And again, this is just purely personal perspective. I really, really do enjoy much more the Surge experience of patching and getting around a system than I do Euro. Again, I'm not talking about sound here at the moment. I'm just talking about how you physically interact with the device itself. I find it just quicker, more enjoyable, easier to do. When at first glance, it may seem more complicated. But
really been enjoying your Surge stories, Matthew, that you've been putting.
Yeah, well, it's like, and again, obviously, it's I'm playing with one here in my hand, but obviously, a lot of it's down to a banana cable. The fact is that you don't have any halt in your thinking process. There's no kind of, oh, do I have a stackable cable, or do I? Oh no, I'm going to have to mult that clock out now. I'll have to unplug this. You just keep going like this. You're like an old-fashioned telephone operator. You just keep stacking up these cables and going deeper and deeper down that rabbit warren. And I just find there doesn't seem to be any break in creativity for me with a banana-based system. And again, with the slight, the 1 unit difference in height with Surge, to me makes all the difference in size-wise. I mean, personally, and again, it's just a personal perspective on this, I do think Euro modules are just that 1 unit too small. For the kind of things that everyone's trying to pack into them these days, there almost hasn't been anything left to give within there. We're seeing lots of screens now. We're seeing all sorts of things, and people are complaining about knob spacers and stuff. Just the uniformity, because everything's the same distance. I mean, I could go on about it all night, but it's just from a personal perspective, I find it a much more enjoyable experience. And again, it's a big thing of if you're playing live, or I've just recently done 2 studio pieces with Surge. You just keep going. You just keep going. There doesn't seem to be that break within the sound or the creative process.
Yeah, it seems that we're on the verge of, well, we're in it, aren't we? The Eurorack getting really small again. I think before I was into it, there'd been this small, lots of 4 HP stuff. It came out, bigger modules came around. But then obviously now things have been getting smaller again, and we've got like the Pico system from Erica Sims, 2 HP as a company that have a range of both analog and digital 2 HP stuff. Interestingly, the 2 HP stuff, when they're demoing it, they seem to put a lot of blank panels in between.
Right.
When you're looking at the case, it's 2 HP, block of blank, 2 HP, block of blank. I guess to show that within the same space, in 84 HP, there's all this space that you don't need, where Eric have just gone this big, and this will make a full 30-minute techno set.
Yeah. I mean, that rant I've just gone on there, what do you think, Charlie, about that? Obviously, you put Surge systems and things together. Have you found anyone else come up with those kind of things, or one of the reasons why they want the Surge system, say, from yourself? Has it been a similar thing?
It's interesting. I think people who come and want a system, they might not have played or only played with one for a little bit. But I suppose a lot of it's what they've heard people make and people talking, like you've just said. I mean, people saying things like that on muffs or on a forum, saying it's amazing, I can just keep going, I can do this. People think, yeah, because I think maybe for the same reason I went away from Euro, other people might have the same approach. They think, this is Euros too, for me, it got too, like this, and it was all a bit much for me. And I think that actually the Surge, it is for you, but it's really dense when you get a whole panel. I mean, it's really, when it's all patched up, you can hardly get in there, So it is as dense as the crazy 2 HP. But I think it does make a real difference to how I would patch. I mean, when I had my dope, years ago, I got dope for analog systems and analog solutions. And I think they went through a period where all the cliff jacks, they'd sort of, you'd brush into the patch and it would go all, and it would cut out. And I was like, oh no. And actually it was only because the ROHS, electronic components, the European directive to get rid of lead and Rapid Electronics were getting rid of all their banana jacks at like less than a penny each. I must have bought, I was just like, okay, this is great. I'm going to get these. I like the colors, it was a bit, I wasn't making modular, I was making systems to control artworks and do things like that. And it was like, this is incredible way of patching. You can use a banana cable for, if you're silly, for mains. So you could have your panel with 12 volt to control solenoids or lighting, got low voltage, low amp mains. It's a bit silly, but so the whole thing would have a uniform look with one connector that cost nothing. I mean, that was the thing. Now it's become, I think, for me, it's almost like the switching jack thing, which they have, you have in Eurorack. I miss that, I think. Maybe that's the only thing I miss, is where you can have a normalized thing.
Yeah, that's something I never thought of with different jacks. For anyone watching that maybe doesn't know that, if sometimes with a switching jack on a different pin on the back, you can pre-connect a signal from somewhere in the circuit that you can override by plugging something in. So it may be that on a semi-modular voice, your oscillator goes to the filter input, but when you plug into the filter input, it cuts the normalizing. Probably
you can do on some inputs, you can put a pull up or pull down resistor, so it's got like an internal clock, and if you patch in, it will be external. But that's a bit, I find it a bit hit and miss with the current source, the electronic side of it. But I think the other thing about Surge is people don't, they with Euro, you're like, I want this next. Oh no, I'll have that. With Surge, traditionally, you'd just have one panel, and you'd have to decide on your whole synth at once. You wouldn't have, there's no swapping out the thing at the end. If you've got that filter, you've got that filter, and you've got that filter forever, unless you buy a whole new synth. I mean, I have actually, this whole, my thing is the individual, so the Euro racking, the 4U, individual.
Yeah.
But that was mainly, it wasn't like I was thinking, oh, this is better because I can make modules and sell them. It was just better for swapping things around. Like if you're playing live, 4U is, you do have to take a bit more with you. There's no like clever modules, or we weren't. It's all very, Surge was the Surge patch programming thing. So you wouldn't have anything with a screen on or anything digital, didn't exist. But I thought now you can bring that in.
Yeah.
So that's like that's a 17-inch panel, but individual modules, so you can swap out. But I like the idea that I still make them as a boat, I think.
Yeah, you still buy a voice or a certain functionality in one row.
Yeah.
Well, it's like what Felix said earlier is, like when he approaches his like wooden system, as it were. That's what I like when I go to this Surge, is that I don't tend to, I don't really patch it with any of the Euro stuff. Not that it can't do, it can do. But I just like that kind of, that's that instrument. I really feel that this is, particularly when to put into this case, that's a self-contained instrument there. And that's, I like its limitations. It would be really easy to reach for another LFO or another envelope somewhere else. But I don't. I let that sculpt the experience, as it were.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think that's a good point. Yeah, like I see it with the tiny sizer as well, which is also like completely modular, but also just self-contained, and you can of course patch it with outside stuff. But yeah, I usually don't, because I think it's creatively also very interesting to just work on a limited synth, of course, and then you just I think you work with it more intensely somehow if you just instead could just swap out everything all the time. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's the I think this is the mini sizer, but they use these little pin jacks. I guess the first thing, and blindingly obvious, do you not feel like you're going to break it?
No, actually,
that almost sounds silly, but I know that someone watching this is thinking, bearing in mind that they're mini pots, just to scale it, you know, it's a single pin that you're plugging in. Does it feel solid, or do you approach it more carefully in a way?
no, it is actually pretty solid, and I get this question also quite a bit, like for the demo videos I've done of those two devices. And I've had the tiny sizer for I think 4 years now and use it pretty much, and those little holes, they don't even wear out, so it's still pretty, it's all very safe in there. I've never broken off anything. I guess you totally could do that, but you'd really have to kind of want to break stuff. But why I sent you this picture actually was because I really like the labeling that you see with the little arrows going away or into the socket, what's an output or an input.
Yeah.
And it's pretty obvious to do it like that, but it's, I don't know, for something where the patch bay is also just to the right and all the knobs are to the left and they're not directly connected via the design, I think that's really intuitive way of patching. And I got really used to that, or those two patch bays of the tiny size and mini size very, very quickly because of that.
It just looks really simple, but works. You know, there's no way of kind of getting that wrong, really.
Exactly. Yeah.
I know that.
And you also have multiple outputs and inputs for all of the features. Even like sometimes you get 4 on the mini size. You often get 4 inputs or output sockets.
Yeah. Well, just looking at that image there, the AD's got the outs, and there's 3 of them. Well, 2. Why is one of the outs the other way around on the
inverted?
There you go. That makes sense. So yeah,
also pretty cool.
Outs and 2 inverted.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a good way of looking at it. I know that the arrows, Earthquaker devices, guitar pedals do that. So you're not having to look round sort of to the sockets at the back of the pedal. You just see all the arrows, which is useful because they've often got multiple in and outs for CV and things as well.
You see them on the top.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. There's a picture of a normal surge panel for any newer Eurorack or synth users maybe that haven't seen one. I love the idea of just buying one big thing. That's it.
Yeah, it is a completely different approach. I mean, again, this is why I was very keen at the start when I sort of mentioned that. I'm not talking about anything sonically. I'm not trying to say this is a better sounding instrument, this is a worse sounding one. I just meant just from a patching experience. But certainly, when you're purchasing them, unless you're purchasing Charlie's individual ones, you've got to go, right, what panel do I require? You know, what do I need? You know. But yeah, you shouldn't sort of think, oh, well, that only seems like a few modules there. I want to get all these Euro ones. But people will know that like Surge modules can do so many different functions per one module, you know. They are not just an oscillator or just a envelope generator, there are many things.
I guess to you, Matthew and Charlie, do you find it takes some of that sort of gas away, that urge to just get more? Well, does it take this away? To be fair, a lot of that is video work and not me just splurging, but there's definite, a need. There's a want and a certain gas, and you see it all the time. You know, the comment comes up, take my money now, as soon as a picture goes up.
Well, I think if I didn't do electronics or make anything, then I would, I suppose, I mean, would I have a Surge? I don't know. I think if I didn't make stuff, I'd probably still have Eurorack and be poor.
Right.
I mean, I probably would have gas. And I do, but the reason I wanted the individual modules is so that I could go, right, I can build something new. And there's so much Eurorack DIY, and now it's crazy. I mean, even the mutable stuff, bringing that into full use is kind of, it's next. You know, it's like, wow, you can have your traditional surge panel with the clouds. I mean, it's the same.
I mean, that's something I'm really interested in. You know, obviously, well, off camera, I'll have to talk to you about that. But it's just, I think that's such a good idea. You know, that trying to keep this system alive. You know, just as obviously how kind of modular synthesis disappeared effectively in the mid '80s and then resurged again. It's like just that particular format of using banana cables and stuff. I think is, you know, if you haven't tried it and if you get a chance to, is to have a go. You know.
Yeah. Definitely.
You have to buy like a full surge panel, like for somebody new to the system. I find it quite difficult to choose then, because I know I can't swap it around. So that's what made me actually not buy one at some point, and I went 5U because at least I had some kind of individual panels. But did you find that difficult, like to set on one or to choose one specific panel design?
Yeah, initially, yes. I mean, I did lots of kind of research into it, and I basically came up with, you know, one of the panels that was available. I thought, yeah, that's a great kind of starter one that will be able to have, which will be able to make sound and generate CV to control as well. And I had that for quite a long time, and it was absolutely fine. It's just that two other panels came available at a really good price, really close to each other. It was like, so I just kind of maxed out, you know, the card and just got those. So,
just while we're on, I wanted to come back to different things in some of Charlie's work, different modules in surge format. That sort of urge to get more again, and then this idea of gas. I don't sort of feel like when I look at, I guess I don't have it, so it's hard to say, but take like the API 500 series format stuff for compressors and EQs and studio gear. I look at that sort of little lunchbox and I look at a surge box and I kind of do see an end result. You know, if they're the 500 series, you've one little unit, 19 inch, and that's your recording chain. I don't think I'd get the same gas. Say for swapping Eurorack filters out, I don't think I'd want to swap out a compressor quite so quickly. And same with surge. I feel like, especially with all this stuff, even if I went your way, Matthew, and didn't integrate the two, you know, they're separate instruments, if you like, I can see that a panel or two rows would be enough.
Oh yeah, I mean, completely. I mean, again, I mean, it's back to the thing. It's modular. Go and do what the hell you like. You know, patch them together or don't. You know, you can do whatever you like. But yeah, I mean, you can get so much out of just one panel. You know, will last a long time. You know, from a sonic creativity point of view, you'll be able to just do so many sounds. You know, I think we've mentioned it again in previous shows. I think probably one of the worst things you can do is buy yourself a great big case, because you are going to fail modules, you know. So I tell people at the start, just buy. It tends to be more expensive in the long run, but just buy smaller cases and do them as more tailor-made things. You know, like I know Ben's done it a couple of times, but you might have a small case that's your drum case, or you may have one that's kind of like. You know,
that's what these are effectively. I mean, this is current sort of demo case. It's got a synth voice and control, and I can put something in the bottom and make a video comfortably. I'm trying to rearrange this lot behind, but yeah, you're right that, you know, I might have a two-row case that's just a drum machine that I'll use with a sequencer, or it's got sequencing, or 9U case is like my analog voice or my digital voice, or a drone box. Or I like the idea of these systems that way. Do you find with Surge, again, to Matthew and Charlie, well, anyone else that's used it or has it, do you not find it quite difficult with it being, because it all works on this grid, jack pot, you know, all the sockets and the pots mixed up? Does it not get really, I think you touched on this, Charlie, does it not get really dense when everything's really patched up?
It does get dense, but I think with the a lot of Eurorack, I mean, I go to London Modular a lot, and I look at some of the stuff in there, and you're like, that's literally, I mean, what, I don't know, is it for children? You know, you're like this. Do you need tweezers? So it's not that bad, but it's more like when you start stacking, it gets...
You can't get in to read.
You can still get through, but that's the other thing. You're not going to have any intermittent connection, so you can really, you know, dive in and get in there.
You can be
But
quite
it's so solid. The
you
connection.
can be quite rough with it, but yeah, definitely. You know, I think they were a great idea to do it, but you know, like the Euro stackable cables they were never ever designed to do that in that socket effectively. They're a good idea, but you get certainly more than two, and you're into this kind of swaying territory. You know,
it feels sort of different, yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's it. You try and get in there, you're going to get some kind of audio crackle.
But
Yeah.
the other thing with the older Surge, the paper face, is like they had the separation where the knobs are all at the bottom,
Yeah.
the outputs are at the top, and you have the inputs in the middle. With the 8-row, it's a bit denser, but that means if you're playing it on a skiff, which I think, you know, it's all the knobs are there that you can play with at the bottom, and then you just got your mess, as it were, at the top. Obviously, when you start going higher, I mean, that's the same with anything, you know, but at least you'll have like the cables maybe there, and you can still get in there. But the 8-row can be quite dense.
Yeah.
But I suppose it depends on the panel, you know, how crazy you want to go. You don't really need to go super mental with patch cables to get a really nice sound or voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So some of the bits I wanted to ask you, Charlie, I'll pull this up. We'll just move through some things. So obviously Surge format, but we've got a Buchler oscillator, Klee, the Freela stuff, the Sloth, which was non-linear circuits, I think, that one. Have you had any of these in your, or do you find you use them different in any way? Or do you always work in Surge, and that's just how you've put this together?
Well, I do, because I make stuff for people. So I've made the Buchler 258 Euro module for people. And I've made a Freela, I think, in the quad slope. I've made a few of those over the years. But I think this is the sort of system that you talk to someone for a while, they want to buy a system, and this is what they want to do. So you can say, well, you can get the PCO, the NTO, the Surge VCOs, you can get the CGS ones, which are great. Why not a Buchler, you know, in the same, and you have the same, just all the signals so that they're all matched, which is actually very similar to Euro, you know, 0 to 5 volt this, and plus and minus 2.5. So it actually all works together as if it was designed to, I think. And when you put it all in, it does look, the aesthetic looks like it all matches. Then it matches in your head. So that does then become the Buchler VCO. In a way, you would patch it then like you would a Surge. And when I'm building these things, I do take that into account, like the patch programmability of stuff. Like, what can I add to make this a bit more that you can start patching more inputs and outputs in? And so it's really quite, I mean, when I'm making stuff, I'm thinking in one way. When you have the interaction with someone who's come to you and says, "What about this?" and then you start thinking more and more about new things. It's kind of amazing, stuff I've never thought about.
Thinking of it in different. There's a 4U mutable instrument clouds.
Well, it just looks amazing. It just looks great.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what we're talking about personal.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, well, it all is, isn't it? It's unlike the, say, envelopes episode we did where someone may walk away and think, oh, yeah, I've learned something. I'm going to try X, Y, and Z. They're essentially just learning what our taste is. But how many of these have you sort of managed to get extra functionality into, do you think, Charlie, with that extra 1U? Not just
the clouds I just added attenuators. That one was, I mean, what can you add to that? It's going to be fine. But a lot of things with the Surge, I find that the patching some of the decisions they made are sort of set in the original design. So people look at the wave multiplier, the wave shapers, and think that's how it should be. But if you can add more stuff, like you can have the hidden VCA, I mean, you might as well. So you've got VCable feedback or this sort of thing. I mean, mainly it's sort of tweaking the electronics. I think Random Source have done a lot of that with their system.
Yeah, they have, haven't they?
Sort of, improving the circuit, spending a lot of time.
I think they've done something with that.
I think things like, I know it seems sort of trivial, but it's amazing what a difference it makes. Things like having those switches on that neutron sound orgon accumulator, but physical switches over push buttons,
yeah,
I think makes quite a difference to how it feels for patching. Thinking about how things feel for patching, I've only ever used them at a meet, so I've never had one enough to make a judgment. How does anyone find patching Buchla stuff, where you've got mini 3.5 sockets for audio and bananas for CV?
Yeah, it made no difference to me when I borrowed quite a large system for a weekend once, and yeah, it was just another way of doing it. It didn't seem to be, oh, where's this sort of cable going to go? They were all immediately obvious.
Do you not find any frustration? You know, if you've got, don't know if you've ever worn long cables around your neck and stood over your
time. I answer the door to the postman most of the time with cables around my neck. Why are you wearing cables?
But you then, or like, you see mine sort of on each side of the case, it must break that chain of thought. How are you saying that surge is so fast and you feel that bananas allow you to just, train of thought is just coming out? You can't just reach over. You've got, unless,
Oh, yeah, from our perspective, it is different, yeah. But it was that I saw from when I borrowed that particular Buchla system, like I say, it was quite a large system. The cabling part was the least of my worries. It was the
right.
Just what the hell do these things? What do these modules do?
Yeah, that's fair enough. How do you feel about 5U, Felix? I'll pull up the picture of your 5U system.
Yeah, I haven't got that anymore. I'm just back to Eurorack now, but I liked it, and as others have already said, like with the Surge, I guess it's almost similar that you don't have that much going on the market. I think so. It's a very relaxed atmosphere, not a ton of new modules coming out every month. So the gas is really reduced, I think, and I don't know. I think sound-wise, it's pretty much all the same, I guess. But what I really liked are just the big knobs. Not really big fan of the jacks. I think bananas are a lot better there, and yeah, while the Eurorack jacks are tiny and sometimes prone to breaking or having contact issues, I think those big jacks, they are just sometimes very hard to pull out of the sockets or slide into them. So, and you sometimes have really grabby sockets where you just pull the whole case towards you when you pull it out. And but the knobs, the big knobs, are just amazing, especially on the Rob Hordyke modules. They're so easy to turn and so smooth, and you can really just, you don't really have to grab them like that. You can just use your fingers and just slide them up and down, or use like 2 or 3 fingers at the same time to slide several knobs, because they're just so easygoing. And I like that a lot. And yeah, because not many modules come out. The community on Modular, for example, is a lot more mellow. And and I like that a lot.
All those ponytails that they have.
Exactly. I started growing my hair long as well since then.
I like that there's a VCF Stonehenge on that picture.
Yeah.
It reminded me of the what's the rock mockumentary?
Spinal Tap, yeah.
When Spinal Tap asked for a
the little Well, I mean, Ben and I have been on, when Rob Hordyke was in Manchester, he brought his system with him, you know, entire system. And obviously, it's huge, big thing in this case. And I had a go on that, and it was an absolute joy to play with. But that my only personal bugbear with 5U is the cable size. It's not the knob size. It's not the panel size. It just seems way overkill. Yeah. For the signal that you're transferring around to have these huge cables in there. I mean, obviously, again, all down personal taste. Some people are going to love that chunky telephone exchange type of vibe, but I just don't, you know, I'd much rather have the ability to have multiples wherever I go in the system, as opposed to these big, you know, telegraph wire type things.
Yeah.
How does anyone feel, we'll come on to more specific questions for Hannes on this one, but about overall, I guess with the sort of surge stuff, with it being so neutral, and nice shot of the golden chalice there, Matthew.
Yeah,
makes me laugh every time. Being more sort of lab equipment like and very plain, I guess it maybe doesn't come into play as much, but packaging, website, overall look, you know, profile pictures across social media. Does anyone take much? Well, we do, but it's subconscious. But does anyone really think about that side of things? Do you really buy into a brand and an image and a design?
I think everyone does to some extent. I think if someone said no, not at all, I think they're lying. I really do. I think it's like with anything, the whole thing of don't judge a book by its cover. We all judge books by their cover. We do. You know, we're visual human beings. We do this thing. So it's just to what extent do people take that on board? You know, like Felix was saying earlier, it's like, you know, is that going to really stop me from, if I really want this new oscillator and I love the sound of it, because I'm not that into the panel design, is that going to stop me from buying it? Well, probably not, you know.
It might be the thing that tips a decision, though. You know, if you want another oscillator and there's two 8 HP oscillators with very similar functionality, you know, they do whatever they want them to do. That's then what decides in it, unless one's a lot more money than the other. But I think it does make a bigger difference than we let on.
I get the impression that people, because Eurorack, obviously the prices of all the modules does vary greatly, but I get just from browsing stuff on Moss, or any forum, or just Facebook or whatever, people seem to, it's not money that stops them buying something. It might be the look. I think that is a thing. But certainly from my experiences, musicians are quite of OCD in a way, not OCD really.
But I thought Eurorack people are not musicians in that sense. They're just hoarders of modules, right?
Yeah.
It's funny, yeah.
And there's a lot to be said today, you know, like saying the guitar, if that wasn't the case, like everyone would have like a white Fender Strat, you know. Guitarists are just as kind of crucial about the aesthetic look of their instruments. And, you know, there is a lot of that kind of crossover, I think. But I mean, this is the whole. I mean, I remember like chatting with Dieter Doffer when we were at Super, and we were talking about he said, "Oh, I get lots of criticism because people think, you know, all my modules just look exactly the same, and that, you know, when you get a big system, you know, you don't know which module is which, you know." And obviously, I think with that, it does come down to this size issue again. I think once you get beyond a certain size, you almost become snowblind in your system if everything's the same. Because I remember, again, hearing like Tony Ronaldo talking about, Make Noise talking about, he didn't want to go down that kind of lab aesthetic look. He wanted to go for kind of, you know, that everything's, you know, the software that he uses for the PCBs is the same software he uses to draw the graphics. So that brings that whole aesthetic to that. So you can immediately see his modules within a Euro system. But I think he's still victim to his own design rationale, if you like, because when you get his entire systems that he does, you just become just as blind in that system.
I think, like you said, it's a size thing. You know, like Well, say we were on about having, this case is a drum machine, this is a drone box, an effects unit, whatever. Say a 2-row system of any format. It's kind of easy to master something that your eyes are just fixed on, and you get muscle memory as to what goes where if you keep it the same long enough. If these being separate cases, I find really useful. I think if all of this was just one huge case, and they were all dope for modules, or I'm not knocking dope for any one format of any one brand of Eurorack, I think I would be snowblind.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. I've seen on muffs, I've seen guys with like these huge surge systems, and then that becomes exactly the same. That it's like, wow, where is this? Which panel am I at? But again, if you got it and you've had it for a while, and it stays there, you probably know it all.
But interesting, if you've got a 6-panel or 10-panel surge system, there's only really 20 modules. DTG. So it's more like you have this pattern recognition that if you have, these knobs here, it's like you see the shape, the black, the blue, the red. I mean, the one thing about surge I don't understand is they could have chosen colors that denoted ins and outs and things like that. But
when I first got into it, I thought that that's what they did.
Yeah, it's weird.
Oh no, they don't. And I thought that's what the color thing was. But I totally know what you're saying about that. Like you do get, because the fixed distance of the knobs to jacks, it's all the sort of same distance. You start to get these nice kind of shapes appearing.
Yeah.
Knobs that form almost like letters or numbers, and I find that really, it's almost like, it looks like Braille almost. So when you're kind of scanning across the system.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, you can see it,
One thing I wanted to mention to you, Hannes, I wanted to ask, did the Hex Inverter Mutant drum artwork, was you had me with the additional artwork before I even saw what the module was. That really was an example of me going, wow, I've got to have this bass drum module. And at the time, I didn't want any drum modules. I remember telling Greg for quite a while I'm not interested in drum machines. I was so happy with just samples in the box. I still am quite happy with a computer. Drum machines aren't particularly my thing, but did this artwork dictate what the module looked like, or vice versa? What came first?
Actually, it first came out. Hex Inverter wanted to make something that would kind of remind people of a Roland, since, of course, the modular inspired by the 8 and the 909, depending on which module. So I thought, what is one thing that makes the Roland TR boxes recognizable despite their shape or the knot or the color of the thing? And that's the orange, which you have on certain writing. So it's kind of a dominant color on it, and so I decided to use that as a basic color on the whole series. And that Stacey from Hex Inverter said, yeah, let's do the things we have done with the Galilean moon and the Jupiter storm for the whole series. And so since I knew that was going to be a series about the whole universe of a visual universe, and since the name was I thought about, and then turn into, mutant beings that kind of resemble what the name of the module is. But the two things were not really correct, which is this kind of dominant color which you find throughout the whole range of on the postcards and all the web graphics. But it's not like one thing came before the other panels, and then the whole illustration part came later.
Okay. I mean, I look at it and I want posters, bed sheets, shower. I want to be wearing the mutant
mutant hot glue pajamas.
Yeah, I want the socks and the boxer shorts. Like, it really is one of those situations where my eyes just completely led those decisions that, right, I'm getting this. And like I said, I didn't want a base drum module, or didn't think I did. The modules are great. It wasn't they don't live up to the hype of the graphics. But I don't know, has anyone else had that, where you sort of see, I don't know, that's what I'm going back to, the packaging, the website, the branding, where you buy into that before you really know what the module is?
Oh yeah, I mean, I've done that. Yeah.
Yeah. Just I just wanted to sort of sanity check that it's just not me.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
But I think for me, I found the website that hit me like that was the Ken Stone's CGS, which was the way he writes about the electronics and the possibilities that you could do.
Right.
So it wasn't about the panel design, but it was about the electronics. So I've always approached since from that. I mean, I must say those posters, I don't do Eurorack, but when I first saw the Mutant posters, I was like, that's pretty good. I'm going to get the drum. I'm going to start a little Eurorack with that. But they did the DIY boards, so I did those. But I think for me, it's always been not the sound, but maybe what can I do with this? If I buy that Logic-y thing or make it and add some stuff to it, what it looks like comes after. And in a way, I suppose that's why I like the Surge, because it's easier to design a panel. It's on a grid. It has to go on the grid.
Yeah.
Because a lot of my older stuff was a bit more, I'd spent far too much time looking at knobs and this, and should this go here or there, and is it the golden section, or the proportions. And now I think if you go with the grid, you can really concentrate on the things. It's interesting, I haven't seen Hannah's, I didn't realize that you'd done the Mutant drums. But it almost looks like they have the same, I mentioned Le Corbusier earlier, but his system of the modular, where you have the shapes and then you fit your pattern around it. It almost looks that you can see a similarity between the mutable and the hex inverter somehow, like an underlying form, which is quite nice. It's really quite good.
The hex inverter actually are all on a bit like the Surge, more or less. Not all of them, but most of them are in this kind of fixed grid, where the knobs and the jacks and all the components and actually it's funny because I find it more difficult sometimes to make those layouts work out than modules where we're more free and where we put stuff and things that sometimes are a bit different. Actually, it's probably hard to make an interface which has enough things your brain can cling on. Especially if you have a lot of modules. That's more or less the thing you were mentioning before with Surge, the patterns. Your brain kind of makes a picture in your memory of what the important things look like, and then you just navigate around those.
Yeah.
It's funny looking at those Mutant.
I remember one Mutant machine.
Sorry, Hannes, carry on.
The last thing. Yeah, because the Mutant machine was funny because it at the beginning it was for Hexaver the biggest module we had done up to that, apart from the orbitals, but it's a sequence, so that's a bit of a different thing. And the Mutant machine at the beginning was very complicated because it had on this fixed grid, but you had very distinct sections on the module, which to me was important to show that they kind of are part of a different functionality on the module. And although the jacks were not in line with the knobs because we needed to fit in a lot more jacks, and so I had to come up with a way to make sections but without making lines, which would have made everything look very busy, and at the same time fool your eyes so that you don't see that the jacks are not on the same grid as the knobs. And it wasn't especially because you have this very uniform and strict grid on Hexaver.
I was just going to say about the sort of grid on the hex inverter. If I just go back to your modular grid picture, looking at that clump of sort of hex inverter modules, I get the same thing looking at it as I do Surge. It's almost like the pattern recognition thing of, well, the hi-hats is only 2 sets of knobs, so I know that the one that's got more panel space underneath is the hats, or just that sort of blob of bright orange on the mutant snare around the middle 2 knobs. You're definitely guided in a way.
Well, yeah, for me, if you'd like chop that out from the rest of the modules there, and that was in the skiff, that just looks like a complete instrument on its own, in its own right. It looks like it could exist completely on its own. Yeah.
One thing I wanted to ask while we're looking at it, Hannes, I know Olivier at Mutable Instruments has, whether it's really rigid or not, I'm not sure, but he has layouts of, he won't put 2 sockets, you know, a certain amount so close to each other. There's distances that he always wants to work within with layout. Do you find that you're having to define that a lot for other people with design, or is that already decided before you do?
There's people who already have a very precise idea of spacing and what a minimum amount is or not, and other who are kind of more relying on other people like me to guide them in finding what that is. Well, I'm really a lot in line with Olivier's way of spacing things out, and that's generally how I like to do things as well. As I have my minimum space between knobs or between knobs and jacks and stuff like that needs to be so that I know that more or less people will be able to control things bumping into without moving things inadvertently or bumping into other controls. And that's, I think, very important because, yeah, Eurorack is small, as it has been said a couple of times. It's true. And there's this kind of lots onto panel, and it can get very quick where it becomes hard to actually enjoy interacting with the module because things are a bit too dense or having a hard time doing things. And yeah, so usability is always a big concern when working on panels for me.
Yeah, I mean, we saw that to a bigger extreme. And again, I'll pull an image up in a second for the new Qubit modules that some people have whinged are too big. But Greg, you've got those. They must be nice to work on, being fairly spacious.
I talked about that before. That's exactly what I like about them. And I think it's one of their biggest selling points. Just that spacing. They seem to be setting up a whole thing for live, for working in a live situation. And I think that's exactly what they're good for. Those Qubit modules, that's exactly what I like about them. And the knobs, when you turn them, they're built to interact. They haven't got as much CV as some stuff, but they're built to interact by hand as well.
Well, I think they're quite functionally dense modules still.
Yeah.
Take the chord, I mean, the chord, the other ones as well, the rhythm and other things. It's not that you're not, you know, that's not just a low pass filter in however many HP it is, but it's a very curated experience with, you know, just 4 function knobs essentially, and then the top 2 that are tuning. So do you think, we mentioned you going out live with a laptop, will it be based around these being bigger? Does that make you play differently?
It does, yeah, it does. This is exactly the kind of stuff I want to use when I'm playing live, because it does have that space. I kind of, it's essential for me. I kind of really need it. I mentioned before, my favorite low pass filter is the Sea Devils filter, and that's the same thing. Just the spacing on those knobs for sweeping a low pass. Plus, you've got your CV there as well. But for sweeping a low pass, it's a little bit of 5U in Eurorack.
Yeah, kind of.
Oh,
Say again?
so no, sorry, I'll just cut it out then. Well, I was going to mention, not on a side project thing with it, but I remember reading about Don Buchler, and that he said that they designed the panel first.
Yeah.
First thing in the design process was the panel, and then backwards from that. So it was always, musician focused in the way that it was made. Because I suppose a lot of people would have thought it would have all started with, circuit diagrams, etc. But it was the panel first.
Mm.
The qubit stuff reminds me of that. It's as if they've gone, we want a box that does chords, and we need to be able to do these things, CV live, and we want it to be, playable. And then they've just gone backwards. They probably, they might have been writing software for that first. I've no idea.
Yeah.
One thing to ask anyone, because it's sort of such an iconic layout, I guess, in my mind. Looking at Mutable Instruments grids on there, and I won't tell you what it is, just see if you're drawn to it. Does it remind you of anything?
Oh yeah, immediately.
The way that the diagonal line on grids over to the left there in the middle sort of row. It was a quad low pass gate, wasn't it?
Yeah.
As soon as I saw grids, it's the first thing I thought. Completely different module. I know there is a Euro one that has the same layout and is a quad low pass gate.
I would say out of all the Euro, the best kind of functionality, the features, the easy to use, all the Mutable Instrument stuff and Mark Vobos's stuff. Just from what I've got in my racks, I think they just seem to have a really good balance between things that you can do with the module and space, where obviously I've got other modules that do stuff that are just totally crammed in there and are really, we're going to fit as many features into this module. But they've got breathing space, those two, I think.
Yeah. Thinking of the Verbos behind you, how do you feel about sliders versus knobs?
Well, the first ever modular synth I played on was a friend of mine had an ARP 2600. So that was all sliders. And I just like that kind of visual feedback of being able to say, oh, look, envelope shape. You can see the shape of it. So I've got a little bit of a soft spot for sliders, to be honest. But I know real kind of it, I suppose.
I guess for me, it's certain things. I think, like a filter cutoff, I don't want on a slider. I don't think this is as jammable. It's a wrong movement. I shouldn't be doing that. He's as jammable. Like Felix was saying about the 5U. Again, saying this and that hand movement. But I think the slide is for certain things. I think.
Well, yeah, like the harmonic oscillator, the Verbos one. You can see
the sliders I've felt in Eurorack. Not naming any names, but there's some really crappy sliders in Eurorack as well. So it depends on the module as well.
Yeah,
there is.
They have to be good quality sliders.
Which I think is interesting if you're designing stuff. And the Hordike, I know the 5U, those pots he uses are really expensive. He's thought about, I'm going to have this. You can just, the flick of the finger, you can change something. Yeah. They cost a lot of money. And I think the difficulty with sliders is nowadays you get those Bourne's ones with the LEDs, like on the TTSH. Yeah. A lot of Eurorack are using those with the LEDs. Those are the ones you can get. And it's quite hard to find in the values that you want. If you've got to design, you think, I'm going to make this with sliders, and you need a 500K pot, you're going to be spending a long time looking for that. And you might have to buy 100 or 1,000.
Yeah.
I'd like to work more with, put some sliders on for you, like the Buchler ones with the little colored caps on. I really like the look of that, but those particular ones, again, you can get them, but certain values are harder. With pots, you can get anything you like. You can get them in, and But sliders, I think they would take up more. I was doing a DUSG the other day. I was designing it with sliders. It would actually be a lot bigger.
Yeah.
And I think with a DUSG, it makes sense because you're controlling time. Longer. You can see it. You can do a scale. Whereas with like a cutoff, maybe you do want a knob. So I think a mixture of the both would be nice.
I think that's right. Like what Ben said earlier, like a filter cutoff, etc. I think that's a good point. But yes, things like an envelope, you can immediately see the shape contour just because of the value of the slider.
And a sequencer the same, or like the harmonic oscillator thing, or Buchla 296. But I think there's a lot to be said for big knobs, and that's why I like the mutable designs, because they're you can see they're not worried about the design, and the modules are good enough. You can tell people aren't worried about fitting in. Elements is enormous. I was trying to do a 4U Elements, and it's the PCB. It needs to be 7 inches wide, so you've got a lot of room to play, and it's really quite nice. You can. Is this thing in Eurorack? Because I remember when I had Eurorack years ago, it was like the cases were prohibited. I think I spent 500 quid on my first rack just for the power and the box.
Yeah.
And then you were like, right, now I've got £100 to spend on something else, like an LFO. Yeah. So, but nowadays, and I thought the form factor of Euro, but it was getting smaller, was about the case cost. But surely that's not an impediment anymore. I mean, must be so many cheap options.
There's some. I mean, I think the cheapest option's a tip-top happy ending kit, which is 2 brackets that will stand on a desk or go in a 19-inch rack, rails, and that's it. So it's a sort of open system. There's no sides, back, front. But that with power is about £120 something. It's a single row, not a lot. It's enough power to run the single row, but it's not a lot of power. It's not massively expandable. These don't for cases, the sort of 9U, they're sort of £200-300 still.
Yeah.
It certainly does add up. There's options, but it's not cheap. It's not got cheap yet. I'm just looking at one of your images, actually, Charlie. All this talk about it being on a grid and design. How does anyone feel about that middle module with sort of jacks all over? Not trying to slate it. Just I looked at it and I sort of thought, what's going on there?
Well, that was one of the. I was making their gate sequences, and I was on electro music before I was on Muff. This is years ago, and I was like, we're just having a discussion with people, and I said, how would you design the same thing? And that was the one on the left was a chap called Wetterberg, and he said I'd do 2, 3, 2, 1, just so you'd split up your 8-row sequencer a bit more. And the other guy was DG Tom, I haven't heard from him for a while. He used to do a lot of circuit design. He said of just a random panel. And then the other guy was Royce Roller, I think. Can't really remember.
Yeah.
He said a circular sequencer. And it's just a nice way of, when you're chatting to people you never met on a forum, and what would you do? And then you could say, and you just make them and say, look, that was frac. I actually had a frac moment. So all that blue stuff, I sent some more pictures, was all frac wrap.
I think that middle one would make me feel, probably in quite a cool way, I think I'd be really happy with myself. It made me feel more random than I was actually being.
Yeah, well,
plugging in the 4th gate output, if that's a gate sequence, I think I'd feel like I'd done this really cool random thing, whereas on the left, I wouldn't feel the same way.
Good though, isn't it? The fact that that's exactly the same module, but just approached in 3 different ways.
Well, I can't help making the same thing look different every time. I mean, every DUSG I've done is, I'll add a thing on it, or I want to do something and just play around. But this, I had really good fun. This was the first sort of big DIY system I made, and it was good. Just some is really dense, some is not. Playing around a bit, drawing pictures. The Love Heart one you can see on the picture there.
Yeah.
I did a Christmas tree one. See, and it was all, in a way, we used to play out a lot, and you'd take this rack, and people would be like, watching you. You'd see the rack, I'd be with my back to the audience, and there'd be me and a drummer, like sort of krautrocky sort of synth, and people would be like mesmerized. There's a Christmas tree. They're like, what? Why have you got a Christmas tree or a love heart or a you know? And it's just a bit more fun, isn't it? It's a bit more like, well, you know, it's a Christmas tree, makes a sort of Nordic sounds, Scandinavian electro sounds, and you can sort of have a bit of a story about it. It's quite fun. But yeah, I like
that, we mentioned this off camera. I'm going to bring it up. Me and Greg, probably out of jealousy, and one person did actually message me about it because we must have done it publicly somewhere, and someone didn't get the reference. We keep saying that Matthew's Surgeon bug brand looks too Fisher Price. And I love that without you knowing that, you've sent that as sort of a colour reference to some of these things.
Yeah, it was like you have a palette. Because obviously Fisher Price have done a whole thing with their palette, and or any brand. I mean, what other things I used to look at would be Paul Klee pictures or things like that. So you'd pick a little palette, and they all go. I mean, this one was more based on I can't remember. There was this American 50s rack equipment, like the LA2, but I can't remember the name, but they had this teal sort of color. I was quite fixated where you get the jacks popping out, the color, the sort of the red and green. It really worked for me, I think. But this is something, this is now all for you. All the circuits have just rebuilt it because it didn't really, in the end, I much prefer the look of that, to be honest.
Yeah, that's a really nicely, again, back to this kind of, you know, lab aesthetic. That's got a really subtle kind of colour in the background.
It's funny when I look at Eurorack, and I've said this publicly and to manufacturers, oh, you've a big blank bit there on your panel. Can you not lay it out better so it's not, you know, spread it out? People are going to comment, and people do, and I've been one of those people that have made that comment. You know, the bottom left of your module's blank. You know, there's nothing there. But yeah, I stare at this, and I'm really happy that those two audio inputs don't have a third one next to them.
Well, again, it's back what we mentioned earlier. It's back to that shape reference.
Yeah,
see these kind of.
I think that's what it is. That because that's a system, and all right, we can only see a few modules, but you get the idea of what it's going to look like. I'm looking at an overall shape as opposed to lots of different modules where you then may be judging each individually on different merits.
Yeah, I think space is a very important thing, isn't it?
Oh yeah, we forget it when I have when we're certainly trying to cram it all in a case. Some small modules are great, and things like certain things jamming on small systems as well, but it's kind of hard in a big system, I think. Lots of little things. Yeah. I much prefer to spread them out a bit.
Yeah.
I found some modules lately, again, I don't want to get this into being negative, just a general thought, where it's quite a wide panel. It's probably a circuit reason why they can't fit it knit closer, but the knobs are right on the edges of the panel. So even though there's loads of space, it's going to be up against whatever module you put next to it. That I found very odd. I imagine it's a circuit thing. I know someone brought it up on the Ross and Morpheus that, you know, why didn't they spread the knobs out further? It might be that the processor sits on that side of the board and it's a single board, right, and the panel mounted, so they can't actually put a socket where you think it should be, or it's kind of an odd one. What about packaging? Does anyone keep packaging?
Personally, well, just only because I've made a new loft space where I live. I keep all the packaging for every module.
Yeah.
You know, don't know why. Just if in case I resell it, but you know.
That's it. Just for resale, in case resale.
Some's great. I've had, you know, amazing boxes that look incredible, and I've also had a module arrive that's, you know, from the manufacturer that's just in one piece of bubble wrap.
Yeah.
That's it. You know, I've had both ends of the spectrum, really.
It's strange. Again, it's another subconscious thing, but while we're thinking about this, talking about this, even things second-hand, the amount of effort someone's gone to packaging, even non-original packaging, you know, random box, load of bubble wrap. I feel different. It's really odd. Like, it feels so different taking something out, like when they've packaged it well, whether it's the original or not. Or I've certainly had things like you say, Matthew, where it's sort of well, not one piece of bubble wrap like you literally had, but a little bit of bubble wrap thrown in a postal bag. And it's all rattling around in there.
I don't know. I don't really care too much about all of that, I must say. I do keep the packaging of modules, but just like for the first couple of weeks, because I think, yeah, I might resell them or something like that, but in the end, I just get rid of them. And then, yeah, just take whatever boxes I have lying around if I need to send them off again at some point. I don't know. I mean, there are beautiful packages. I think, like, when we talk about just the general design and what you also said about websites and stickers and stuff, I think Bus Instruments, they have also their corporate design handled quite well, and they have really beautiful packaging as well, but I think still it's just a box empty sitting somewhere, so I can just throw it out, and if I just need one other, I just take whatever I have just lying around.
I'll tell you whose packaging I do like, and just from its aesthetic, I like just how it looks, and it's super simple, and the actual boxes, and I just think it's such a good idea, is ALM Busy Circuits boxes. I just think they're really cool, like in the tubes.
Smaller stuff in the tubes as well. That's the best idea.
Yeah, really neat. It makes it really strong too.
I think, again, it's just me stroking your ego a bit, Hannes. Not that you've got one, but I pull this up with the mutable boxes and things. It does.
Yeah.
I think it must subconsciously make people feel differently about a company and a product. I mean, there's some of the new Sonic Potions things there that we met Sonic Potions at Super Booth, and it had all this there, and it sort of took us at the time. But this whole little sort of world that the graphics creates, and like we said, the same about Hex Inverter. I don't know what it is. I don't prefer those modules. It's like the graphics make me think that's a better module, or there's something to be said about it drawing you in to this little world. Well, like this, you know, these little sort of creatures and things for Sonic Potions, the mutable graphics.
Mutable little toys in the box as well.
Glad it works.
Part of the experience.
Well, I think it makes me want, like I said, you know, I want the shower curtain and the socks for that stuff. So it's sort of, I'm happy to be like a walking brand of, you know, which t-shirts and the lot. That said, if someone made a Surge style grid t-shirt, I would also equally buy into that being the thing as well. So yeah, I think we've about covered most things that we wanted to look at. Is there any personal projects, anything anyone wants to promo, bands, releases?
Just have a couple of new packaging.
Yeah, let's take a look.
Have some. No, just Cyclone Labs surprised me when they sent me the cost divider in these metal boxes.
Cool.
Which, by the way, I haven't designed, just for the word. And it's very nice. I think there were just the special editions where they put them all in these boxes, which you can reuse, kind of really nice, well made, and the modules were wrapped in these paper and these tissues. Which, by the way, also the Bastel modules always struck me because they have this nice paper. I remember, the first time I thought, are they maybe getting destroyed a lot when they get shipped by the postal services? But apparently, I never had any issues with it, and it's nice because this paper gives a very different feeling from bubble wrap.
Yeah, it's like you're unwrapping a present. Really,
maybe it's my professional. Yeah, exactly. It's a different experience when you open up the box and something is in an paper. And another nice box, which also just partially something I've made, is Rabid Elephant. And I think one neat thing, instead of the wrap, you have just it's a padded box, so isn't wrapped in the ugly bubble wrap, but still protected. It's a nice kind of shoebox kind of thing.
That box, Hannes, and mine's there. I did keep this. I think it's great. It smells really good. What's the
Oh. Yeah, as well.
I put a bit of foam and I keep all my ZDSP
It's
cards.
African smells it.
But no, that was one where I needed somewhere to keep those cards. But yeah, Erica Sims put theirs on foam as well. He cut like 2 little foam, almost like cheek ends that the module sits on in the package. I'm trying to find a picture of Nobots. They wrap their stuff in paper, but it really is like old English sweet shop striped paper bags for their DIY kits. And like Felix said, it's like opening a little present. It's cool.
You should find it on their Instagram, I think, or Tumblr, I remember. Or maybe on their Twitter, yeah. I've seen it recently. There's this white and yellow, white and yellow and white and red pattern.
Yeah, it's not. It's strange. Some people might be watching and think, "What is?" Well, me specifically, and doing this. What's Ben banging on about? But I think it's such an interesting topic that presented with different systems, even that, like Matthew said, forget about sound. We definitely all are, whether we realise it or not, affected by it. Is there anything anyone wants to sign off on? Certain projects, anything they want to promo?
Not at the moment, not me.
None of them doing anything. It's hard to know exactly when I'll put this up, but loads of new videos from me. Felix, are you still got some videos in the works, or are you too busy with other things, or what's going on?
No, I definitely have some videos coming up. Yeah, like I said, I want to do more with the Usability, and I'm going to film some more videos there. I still have some Bastel videos I want to do, and Aero instrument stuff as well. So yeah, those will keep coming, but I have to see how I have time. So I'm not on a fixed schedule anymore, like I have been, like I think until last year or earlier last year, I don't know. But yeah, they'll keep coming. Yeah, so that's that. I just posted a link to the chat here to another packaging, by the way, which I just remembered. It was like the Aero instrument hard candy. Which actually came with real candy, which was really funny in a cool box.
Oh, wow, yeah.
We should say while we're sort of signing off, we did meet Paul Task from Aero Instruments at Superbooth, who's great. He was good to meet.
Yeah, he's a nice guy, yeah. And very fun online store, I think. It's always an experience to browse there. Yeah, that's
like the sort of thing that maybe for 5 minutes I could buy my girlfriend for Valentine's Day, and she'd think I'd actually done something. I'd maybe get 5 minutes out of that before she sort of shoved me out of the way and threw it in my face. Yeah, cool. Well, plenty of videos from me. We'll make sure there's links to everyone and all the stuff they're doing in the video description. Go follow people and things like that. And yeah, cool. Cheers for coming on, everyone. We'll see you soon.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Thank you.